we've got a group of people who have figured out health. We just need to look to the Amish who are doing things in the natural way. Are these things true? I call this a nonsense claim. A warning bell should go off in your head when you hear that. People make kind of wild claims about the Amish all the time. I think there's a lot of wishful thinking. There was a fact check article, I know that term is loaded, but let's call it a fact check, done by USA Today about Amish health, claims that people make about the Amish and their health practices. The article author contacted me to get my comments. It was in response to a social media post. Amish people have a longer life expectancy than regular people, and they only drink raw milk. There's two things there. They don't get vaccinated either. 3, there have never been outbreaks of any kind of pathogens in their communities. 4, they also have no cases of autism. 5, this person's social media post, I think, was chosen because it captures like 5 different wild health claims in one like 3-line post. And this wasn't a unique social media post. I mean, people make kind of wild claims about the Amish all the time. I shared my thoughts. A good bit of it was used in the article, but then I just did a follow-up post about this. What's going on in these claims, and are they true? Is there some truth to these? So the first one here, number 1, do Amish people live longer than the rest of us? So where this comes from, well, I think one driver of this idea is a story that was really got a lot of attention back in 2017. There happened to be a gene mutation study which found that Amish in one Indiana community showed significantly greater longevity, about 10 years longer than others within their community that did not have the mutation. So if you have this mutation, you're in this one Amish community in Indiana, specifically Adams County, Indiana. So if you have this mutation in that community, you're showing greater longevity, about 10 years longer than the other Amish people in your community without that mutation. That story went crazy viral, picked up in a lot of places. I mean, you can imagine, how captivating this kind of a story could be. And there's talk of, maybe they're be able to develop some drugs and some treatments or gain insights from this study that could be applied to the rest of us, which is why these stories are so exciting. I think that's one reason why it maybe got into the public consciousness, this idea that Amish live longer. But again, this was just one community. I tried to find examples of Amish longevity in other places. There's not a ton of studies on that, to be honest. One study, a 2001 study, showed a 71-year mean lifespan for Amish in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Okay, that's about 25 years old, but I don't think that constitutes living longer. So as far as I know, there hasn't really been a comprehensive study on Amish lifespan, which would take in like many groups. I think it'd be pretty hard to coordinate that. Could it be true that Amish live longer than us? I mean, we don't know. It seems like we've had at least one study that shows that they don't, the Lancaster County study. And the study that maybe makes people think they live longer than us really only applied to one community and to specific individuals within that community that have that mutation. Number 2 in the social media claims, they only drink raw milk. Is that true? Well, dairy farming is common among the Amish, but most Amish people are not dairy farmers. There's a significant chunk who are farming, but there are many other occupations nowadays. Amish people work in factories. Amish people build houses. They do furniture making. They do other businesses. They run stores. What I'm getting at is not all Amish have their own easy source of raw milk. Now, your typical Amish farm family is going to be drinking raw milk straight from the cow, essentially. I've drunk a lot of raw milk when I'm staying with Amish farm friends. Other Amish who are not farmers or they don't have their own cows will get it from neighboring farms, so they will drink some raw milk as well. And I would say the Amish as a whole do tend to drink a lot of raw milk, I would guess more than your average non-Amish person does. But, if you say they only drink raw milk, that's just logically that's impossible. Some Amish people out of necessity or convenience are going to also be drinking store-bought pasteurized milk. Not everybody has instant access to raw milk or a farm right in their area. You move to a small brand new Amish community where there's 3 families, no one's a farmer. Where are you getting your raw milk from? Maybe you're getting it from another source in that community, but there's not many non-Amish farmers in a lot of these places. A lot of times the Amish move to places where the people stop farming. They take over old farms. My point is there's not always a source of raw milk for Amish people. They don't all drink only raw milk. It's kind of silly. Number 3, they don't get vaccinated. Okay, so this is another one which there's maybe a kernel to it of truth or a chunk of truth to it. But again, these blanket statements, they don't They never and they always. Those are things you got to be careful with saying. Now, there's not really a formal prohibition on things like vaccines in Amish churches. It's kind of like a comparative voting. It's kind of like voting. It's more of a matter of personal choice. Now, church leaders or people in the community might speak out against those things, to take those two examples. But on the whole, Amish culture does have tendencies, and they do tend to historically avoid vaccines. Doesn't mean they don't get them at all. It's just like the rates traditionally have been lower, vaccination rates, if you look at the Amish more or less as a whole. They've done studies on this. There are some reasons for this, why people don't, in Amish communities, don't necessarily vaccinate to the same levels. Some of it's maybe not seeing the point of vaccination. Some of it is having skepticism about the safety. Some may want to rely on God's protection rather than a man-made vaccine. That might be something you hear in the more conservative communities especially. But it's not like there's some blanket ban on vaccination among the Amish, and people who decline getting vaccines can be moved to change their mind. And one of the stories I always think of in this case was the case of a measles outbreak, which happened in Holmes County, Ohio, around 10 years ago. I think there were some missionaries overseas that were unvaccinated, and they ended up catching measles and bringing it back to the community. In that case, you had thousands of Amish people, I think it was like at least 8,000, that decided to take the measles vaccine in the immediate response to that situation. Another example, another community, hundreds of Amish got vaccinated against hepatitis A after it appeared in one Amish boy. So basically, there's no blanket ban on Amish being vaccinated. That's another one of those always never statements that usually kind of gets you in trouble, gets you fact checked, I guess. Number 4, there have never been outbreaks of pathogens in Amish communities. That was the 4th claim this person made. I call this a nonsense claim. I mean, you've had measles, which I just talked about, whooping cough, COVID hit the Amish, even polio, talk about super rarity, but even polio on 2 separate occasions have all happened. And polio has happened within the last, there was one in the early 2000s. There was one, I think it was in the late 70s. So when you hear people say like there are no outbreaks of pathogens in Amish communities, I mean, these are basically, people are kind of describing the Amish as somehow having some special protection from those ailments which affect all of us. And I think there's a lot of wishful thinking in these kind of claims. We've got a group of people who have figured out health. We just need to look to the Amish who are doing things in the natural way or the old way, the ways we've forgotten and lost. There are a lot of these kind of beliefs out there. The story of Amish health practices and do they go to doctors, folk treatments, all those things, that's a whole other topic in video. Let's just say they do a variety of approaches to health. Generally, it's a mix of conventional and traditional, and in some communities, it's much more heavily weighted in one direction or in another. But usually, it's some kind of a mix. Often that's due to cost, due to practicality. Not having a car where you can just drive to the doctor, you have to depend more on things you have around the house. Anyway, we have this idea of the Amish as some kind of pristine community that's figured out how to deal with health. And if we just copy them, we can live longer than everyone else too, according to that belief. All this is not to say that the Amish don't do things that are healthy, practices that are healthy that we can also adopt. Things like growing, your own food in a garden and eating fresh vegetables. I think that's probably more healthy than eating processed foods, for example. The physical exercise thing. Not to mention things like things to do with social media and mental health and all that stuff that's related to those practices. There can be some things within typical Amish practices that we can adopt and benefit from. But it's just these things sometimes people go way too far with them. Finally, they have no cases of autism. That was a claim. So I wasn't asked about this by the fact checker people from USA Today. So I'll just give you the quote from their article because they had already looked into that topic. And they wrote that the autism claim is also demonstrably false, as USA Today previously reported on the existence of autism in Amish communities. The condition was documented in 2009 and 2010 studies. So there are examples of autism within the Amish. I don't know about rates, autism rate. I don't know if those studies have been done. Okay. These two, you notice these last two just kind of connected with each other, or these last couple, they don't get vaccinated and then they don't have autism. Those two beliefs were thrown into this social media claim, and that's often the case. They're often connected to one another, kind of playing on the belief that vaccines cause autism that some people have. So I've already talked about this idea that Amish ways can vary. They're not all healthy. Okay. Some of them are, some of them aren't. It depends on what community you're talking about, which is they can have some things that are culturally prevalent in one community. You can have communities where you have more obese Amish people. Some Amish earn much lower incomes than others. Thus, they have, worse diets. They do eat more processed foods. They eat white bread. They eat stuff that's not very good. Some Amish like junk food. You can go in Amish grocery stores, you can buy soda, you can buy chips. Those are things that Amish people enjoy eating too. And can you adopt things from the Amish though? It's, I think you have to be careful about it because I don't want to copy paste certain aspects of an Amish lifestyle, but not change other ones. For example, I don't live a as physically active lifestyle as an Amish farmer does. So if every day I'm eating like a typical Amish farmer's diet, but then I don't burn calories like he does, I'm going to get, I'm going to have weight gain, okay? And probably other health issues. Just logical. I summarize this saying that when people talk about what the Amish do to achieve health, they tend to apply certain positive seeming traits across the Amish as a whole. This is how the Amish do things. But when you've got close to 700 different Amish communities, there's a lot of variety within Amish society. They also tend to ignore any negatives within the Amish. As a whole, you could say they definitely do some things that are positive from a health perspective, tending to have a lot of physical activities, one of them, although that's not the case for all Amish, but they're not immune to negatives, let's say that. There are overweight people within the Amish. There are Amish who use tobacco regularly. There are Amish who use alcohol regularly. And if you've been to multiple Amish communities that are not, closely related, you've probably observed this for yourself. I think if we rely too much on Amish ways, we can overlook some things. Maybe it can also lead to potentially more effective treatments being ignored, because we believe the Amish do it this way. Oh, they don't use conventional medicine or conventional doctors. We believe, whether that's true or not, the Amish treat everything naturally. Well, that could lead to someone missing a more effective treatment, even though some of those non-conventional treatments can have value. I'm not arguing that they don't. In summary, each person should make their own health decisions, but you can potentially end up in a bad place if you put blind faith in what you believe are one group's set of practices, especially if you base your assumptions on incorrect beliefs or create a blanket belief based on limited examples, which is, I think, what this social media person has done. So that's kind of how I summarized it.